And so when he gets a little too much in him, he starts calling it the Christopher Columbus bourbon. And I said, why do you do that? He goes, it's that 1492 bourbon. I'm like, no, it's not 1492, dude. It's 1792.
Hello and welcome everyone to episode 5 of The Mashup, the best bourbon conversation you're going to hear all week long. We're your hosts, Michael, Anthony, and Steven. Hello, fellas.
Good evening.
Howdy.
Well, I've got a little story to share with you guys before we get started. I did something kind of hipster and millennial this weekend with two of my kids.
Very dangerous to say hipster and millennial.
Well,
once you
hear this, you will probably agree. I took them to a cat cafe where we were put into a room with 7-8 kittens, and they were just allowed to run free and play, and we had hot cocoa, and we were there for about an hour. So that's my millennial update with you guys.
So I thought they served cats at the cat cafe as a restaurant. From what I understand, my wife has taken my daughter there as well, and from what I understand is these cats are up for adoption. So you play with them, and they rope you in, and then you adopt one and take one home with you from the cat cafe. I told my wife in about 6 months there's going to be a bunch of people giving away cats that were their honeymoon is over with the cat cafe cats. So
yeah, I could see how they marketing on that one. It looks great when you're in there at the cafe, and then when you get the cat home, it's a different story. But I'm not excited about this at all because I'm very allergic to cats. And so I will not be taking my kids to any kind of cat cafe, but I give you a lot of props for doing that and also admitting to it here.
It's for the kids.
Yeah, it's for the kids, all right? So we do everything for the kids. So I think we're going to jump right into the bottle here.
So today we have a 1792 small batch bottle. It is a personal favorite of mine, so I'm just going to say that up front. Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure, and I actually was telling Steven that, we all first met each other and started drinking bourbon together, that I always dubbed him as a 1792 guy. And so he's always had a good lineup of 1792 stuff, but here we go with the specs of the bottle. 1792 is from the Martin Distillery, 1792 small batch. And, of course, Martin is owned by Sazerac, familiar name from previous podcasts, and, of course, a huge name in bourbon. This bottle that we're drinking tonight has a 2018 laser code, although this has been produced a little bit longer and it's gone through different instantiations of naming. It was previously known as Ridgemont Reserve before it became what we know today as 1792 small batch. The ABV on this bottle is a very interesting 46.85%, coming in at 93.7 proof, and it is a non-age stated bottle, become a familiar theme with a lot of these mid-tier bourbons on the shelf, but it's rumored to be 6 to 8 years old. The mash bill is undisclosed, but again, rumored to be high rye, between 15 and 25%. And the MSRP, it comes in at a very affordable, around $30. Of course, depending on where you're at, what market you're in, you might find it on special closer to $25, $27.
yeah, it's another one of those ones in that $25 to $30 category that we've probably talked about before on other episodes. They're there every day. You can find it pretty much on the shelf anywhere you go. It's not real expensive. It's a cool looking bottle. It's got the 1792, which was the year that Kentucky first became a state, is the brand. And then they have a bunch of different variants of this 1792. So they got different colors to kind of distinguish between the different kinds. I'm looking at the back real quick, and, I'm big on what are they the first of, right? Every company we've had, every bottle we've had, somebody's been the first something, right? This one doesn't say anything about being the first. However, it does say at the bottom, it makes the subtleties of 1792 make it incomparably brash and bold. So we'll see what that means when we get into it, because that doesn't seem like a selling point to me, but, who knows?
Yeah, those are not notes or
brash. Everybody wants a good brash bourbon, right? Let's see if it burns all the way down, right?
Maybe it's a little bit of the call out to the rye mash bill, maybe, but still, I agree with you guys. I don't know how that's supposed to be something that's appealing, right?
Also, I know a guy, every time he likes to drink this stuff, and when he drinks it pretty heavily. When he gets a little too much in him, he starts calling it the Christopher Columbus bourbon. And I said, why do you do that? He goes, it's that 1492 bourbon. I'm like, no, it's not 1492, dude. It's 1792. So it's always kind of funny when he's always had that. Pass that Christopher Columbus bourbon over to me. All right, dude.
Well, Michael, with you, I agree that the 750 bottle is very attractive. We use the word handsome, but let's talk about the 1.75 liter size bottle.
That thing is a tank. That thing is, I mean, it feels like it should have wheels on the bottom, and you got to roll it around the airport like it's a piece of luggage, because it is enormous.
It is the same footprint, but instead of making a different shape bottle, they decided to go vertical.
Yep, and like the Elijah Craig last episode, this one has a big lip on the top, which makes pouring nearly impossible without spilling something. Those of you that are looking at designing bottles, take my word for it that I hate those kind. But it does have a nice gold top. If you follow 1792 on Instagram, I do, and Facebook, they are big in, if you look at with the font and the gold and stuff, they like to push the kind of New York edgy looking style on their Instagram with their ads. You know, they like to have people hanging around in like,
it's the gentleman's bourbon.
Yeah, the gentleman's bourbon kind of thing, you know, so.
Back room.
Right, exactly. So.
You know, mahogany.
Yeah.
Mahogany bookshelves, cigars.
They love all that good stuff.
The 3-piece suits. You know, it's the bourbon for that.
I love the fact that you guys mentioned that, because there are some things that I love and hate about this bottle. One thing that I do love is the shape of it and the gold top. In fact, full disclosure here, way back when I first moved to Kentucky, I needed a couple of bottles entertaining some family that came down. I picked up the 1792, not because I knew anything about it, just because I liked the look of the bottle. When I had done that, I remember thinking, this is really nicely shaped. The one thing I hate about it, though, is it takes up a lot of space on the shelf, and I like to display my bottles, and so I find myself turning these ones sideways because the footprint is so wide. Nothing against it. I do like it a lot.
Well, and you can only pour it in one direction because it's long and skinny. You know, it's not round, so you don't just pick it up and pour it. You have to make sure that you're kind of like aiming the bottle on the skinny end into the, because obviously your hands aren't wide enough to cover it side to side. So, you know, it's a cool looking bottle, similar in style, and I believe, I mean, if y'all want to do the research on this, I believe it's similar in style to the Woodford Reserve bottle, which I think kind of caused some controversy when they first came out because they were called Ridgewood Reserve and their bottle was shaped like a lot like Woodford, and so I think Woodford might have sued them, and that's why they went to Ridgemont Reserve, and then even the reserve part, I think they weren't happy about at Woodford. That's when they ended up going to 1792.
A couple of things that you mentioned, Anthony, especially about you like to display it just because it's a good looking bottle. I really like this bottle for a few things that are unique for it. I love the fact that each bottle, each variant, has its own color ribbon around the top. Because I love when I see pictures of people's collections, or if you go up to a bar or you're at someone's house and you could scan their collection, you can just look at that ribbon because chances are it's gonna be in the back or behind other bottles, and you can kind of say, oh, look at that. That's a single barrel version they have.
I don't think maroon would have been the first. I mean, for probably their most regular bourbon, like maroon wouldn't have been the color that I picked. Yeah, I'm sure they had a reason behind that.
I was going to ask what your guys' favorite color is on the neck of the bottle, since we're all familiar with different expressions. I would just say I think the single barrel, that like kind of cream color, is just incredibly nice. That's one of my favorites.
I agree. Let's go through the bottles real quick. So Michael has already mentioned the Ridgewood Reserve, and then from there they changed their name to Ridgemont Reserve, and those were age stated, I believe 8 years stated.
I believe.
Yeah.
And then from there they changed their name to 1792, and from that there is a small batch, the single barrel, the bottled and bond, the full proof, the 12-year, the sweet wheat, the high rye, the 225th anniversary bottle, and the port. You cannot get the 225 or the port anymore. The high rye supposedly, I believe, is supposed to come out this year again. But the port, Barton just released a new label, Thomas S. Moore, and that is supposed to have the 1792 bourbon in it. They are flavoring it in different wine barrels, further expression of the port. But yeah, each one has its own color. And like you, The single is very nice. I also like the 12 year. It's got that silver color, and it looks. I don't know. I like that one a lot.
Agree. And you don't see it very often, but the port finish 1792 is like a Kentucky blue, like a royal blue. That one kind of pops. It's different. Does pop. But of the ones that you see regularly, I would probably agree with Anthony. I like the single barrels, kind of whitish tan color. This one just doesn't stand out to me.
Yeah, and it's amazing to think that when we all probably had our first taste of 1792 small batch, or even before that, to think that none of those line extensions were really out there from the beginning. There's something that's of more recent note. Very interesting that they've taken that turn to do a lot of experimental stuff, like a lot of other distilleries as well.
Have you ever seen their little 50 milliliter bottles of this? They're the same shaped bottle, just teeny tiny. They're kind of cool looking.
I haven't seen those. Are they plastic or glass? Do you know?
I think they're glass.
I think they're glass.
Yeah, I think they're glass.
That's nice.
I think right now, I saw them at the distillery gift shop. Okay. I don't know if I've seen them out in the wild.
Yeah, no, that'd be a cool pickup to have one of those if they're glass. I always like that with the mini bottles if they're glass and not plastic. I guess I'm weird like that, but yeah, I definitely appreciate that. That's cool.
So we poured our first glass, and it's very, I guess, copper. It's pretty dark.
Yeah. If I was to describe it, I would say, well, we were out shopping the other day and got a bottle of local honey, and it kind of looks just like that local honey.
Yeah, on the nose, I mean, you're definitely getting, the vanilla and caramel, but you can smell some of that higher percentage rye that's in the mash bill.
You guys are probably I'm probably gonna be completely alone on this one, but I used to drink the very old Barton quite frequently, and there's some notes that I pick up in this, and for some reason I pick up a little bit of a banana note in the nose anyway. I don't know if it'll translate over to the palate. Maybe my nose is off tonight, but I definitely smell a little bit of banana.
All right, so I'm not getting this, but this is just an off-topic story a little bit. As I look at a list of possible descriptions and notes, allspice is one of the ones that people always mention, and I'll be quite transparent. I had no idea what allspice was. And or is even still to this day. I thought it was just something that kind of like Dash, like the people just mix together and it creates turns out it's an actual thing. I was at the grocery store the other day. I was looking at the spices and the seasonings and all that kind of stuff. I saw allspice, and this is just between us, right? This stays right here between the three guys.
Just us listening.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I may have opened one of the cans of allspice and smelled it just so that I could know what that is, so that if I find it in my bourbon, I can identify it, and then I may have put it back.
So it sounds like we have a house expert on allspice.
Turns out this was Jamaican allspice. I don't know if they're all the same or not, but
you know what? I'm starting to pick
after sniffing the Jamaican allspice, I probably shouldn't have drove home either. But
so, it's interesting you mentioned opening that in the grocery store, because if you listen to experts who probably do this stuff way more than we do, they say that they recommend doing stuff like that, just getting a bunch of things that you might taste or smell in your bourbon and go around and create yourself a sort of aromatics for bourbon type of a thing, so that you can know what you're trying to smell for.
Let's go for our first taste, gentlemen.
All right. It's spicy.
Yeah, it's got a medium finish, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Medium to long.
Vanilla really comes through on the palate for me. I think that's kind of what I may have been smelling and not really knowing that I was smelling it. So vanilla and spicy.
I've got like a banana aftertaste.
I know this is pure psychology, but I taste banana way more in the bottle and bond than I do in the small batch, and I think it's just because they have a yellow tag on it. And so
it probably is. Yeah.
I'm thinking about bananas when I'm tasting it, so maybe that's it. I don't know. It's definitely enjoyable though. It's got nice sweetness to it. I think it shows that it has some age to it. It's definitely not watery by any means. It's got a nice feel to it.
I think I've kind of grown up with 1792 in a way, because when I started my bourbon journey, this is when Eagle Rare was just sitting on the shelf. Hard to believe nowadays, but I had a couple bottles of those. I had the Basil Hayden. They were fine, and then I just picked this bottle up. I think one day because of the shape. I was like, let's give this one a go. And I've really liked it since then. It's pretty much been my go-to since then. So
yeah, it's interesting how we all kind of have those bourbons that we find and we're not even looking for them. And I feel like 1792 is one of those that, when you found it, at a time where people could find whatever bourbon they wanted, you chose this one, and I think for good reason. I mean, it's got, to me, really nice flavor. Like I already admitted, to much to the dismay of others, I'm for my cheap stuff, I like very old Barton. You know, they've changed that many times over the years, from having age statements to being bottled in bond to not being bottled in bond anymore. And I'm with you on that one. It's a good one to find. You know, if you had to pick between this and Eagle Rare, I think it gives it a little bit of a run for its money. That's just me anyway.
Well, I think I liked it because at the time, you could really pick this bottle up for $21, $22 compared to now where they've kind of raised it. Definitely for the, $20 range, it was.
But it hasn't gone up much, I think.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of other bottles we've seen, I mean, in 3 or 4 years, it's, you can still, like Anthony said, maybe find it on sale for $25 or $26, something like that. But
yeah, I definitely believe, depending on what store you go to, this is definitely a mid to upper 20 price bottle nowadays.
So would you say it is incomparably brash and bold?
I don't know what I would say about it.
Wait, but there's a second part, yet smooth and balanced.
I guess they're getting the brash from the rye, high rye content
It's like
of the mash bill.
It's like those commercials where the deodorant commercials where they'd say strong enough for a man but pH balanced for a woman, right? You got the just strong enough but also it can serve its purpose for everybody.
When I did buy this for entertaining, one of the people that really enjoyed it was my aunt, and she is not a person that drinks bourbon, that much alcohol, and she really enjoyed it. In fact, I had, I think, 5 or 6 bourbons laid out, and she said, "I'll have more of that one." And so I was like, "Yeah."
Shout out to Anthony's aunt here for
no doubt.
Yeah,
for picking out a winner and leaving the pappy on the table and taking this one, right?
Well, I didn't have. I mean, come on, I didn't have any pappy. Let's be honest, that was back then.
So we expect they have all these versions of their bourbon at Barton, but they had a little incident at a warehouse a few years back.
Well, I mean, from what I know, and I will yield to Michael as well, because I know at the time a lot of people had not even heard of 1792, didn't even know about the bourbon, and all they saw was this warehouse in Kentucky collapsed, and next thing you know, there were bourbon spilling in the river. Everyone was worried about how many barrels were lost and all this other kind of stuff, and so you saw all these memes online, a lot of people posted about it. Basically, from what I understand, there's some kind of bugs in the rick house that eat through the wood. Again, I'm not into all that stuff. I'm not a scientist or anything of that nature to know what's going on, but that's what happened, and apparently they kind of had a feeling that warehouse was unstable. They didn't have visitors going through it or anything like that. It must have been beyond the point, and it just came crashing down, and there was bourbon everywhere.
Yeah, and then it ended up spilling into the river and the creeks, and fish died, and it always ends up turning into a huge fine for a company when that ends up happening, right? Because
I like to think downstream somewhere there was a drunk cow just lapping up the creek water.
Oh, no doubt. Like those of you that mix your bourbon with water, all you had to do is just dip your cup in the river, right? And you had it. 1792 or the Barton facility also makes Fireball, so. And I know everybody that's listening has had Fireball. That's probably their number one product at that place.
Would you say that's bold and brash?
That would be quite bold and brash.
You guys left off delicious.
I'm not good at picking up notes, but I would definitely get some cinnamon out of the Fireball. So, I mean, have you seen the way that Fireball is sold at these liquor stores? I mean, it is insane. If you just sit at a liquor store for an hour or two, you're going to watch 20 people come in and buy Fireball. Like, I guarantee it. Especially if you're near a college campus. But
I saw that the other day. I wanted to grab a bottle of bourbon, and a person in front of me bought like 10 shots of Fireball and a pack of cigarettes, and I was thinking to myself, I hope they're taking those 10 shots somewhere and not taking them to work with them.
That's all they ever buy is the shot bottles. Nobody buys the fifth of it. They could save $10 by doing that. They got to have the individual ones.
Well, and those shots sit right there in that cooler, usually right by the register. And so, of course, you're going to be drawn to that. It's already chilled for you. It's ready to go. I mean, there's no waiting involved.
Steven and I were able to go to a thing on 1792 at a local liquor store here where they had a member of their team came and spoke and talked a little bit about the brand. And so that's where we've learned all this kind of stuff. But they started mentioning all of the different stuff that they make at Barton. And I think they've got a couple other whiskeys and things like that are smaller. And then when they mentioned Fireball, there was one lady there. Steven doesn't remember this story, but I do. And there was one older lady there, and she was like, "Oh, well, I've heard of that before," and and so of course she was listening the rest of the time after mentioning Fireball.
So, fellas, Would you pass, try, or buy?
I think I would try. I like it. It's a good middle of the road bourbon, but there's, and I've mentioned it before, but there's just too many in this category, this price range that I like better. So I would try it. I would buy it when I say try it, I mean I would buy it at a bar or a restaurant because I know it wouldn't be too expensive as a pour. I don't think I'd have a bottle unless I'm trying to collect all of them.
Yeah, I'm going to agree there. I'm going to say try for me, and I'm wondering if Steven's going to say buy or not. I'm anxiously awaiting to see what he says. But the reason I'm going to say try is because I have tried a lot of 1792, and I've sort of settled into the single barrel as sort of my favorite of the lineup. Of course, hopefully we'll get a chance to taste it at some point in time because there is some variation there. But for me, for some of the same reasons that Michael said, when I have other things that I really like in this price range, looking at this one to buy all the time, but definitely would recommend to try because it could become one of your favorites.
Well, surprisingly, I'm going to have to kind of agree with you guys.
I'm shocked.
This is not my favorite of the variety they have. I definitely like the single barrel, the 12-year. Obviously, a lot more than good. This. And I just think as my palate has grown, like you guys said, this price point, you can get others that are just as equal or might be slightly better. Just a couple years ago, you could get a McKenna 10-year for in the upper 20s.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be way better than, the small batch for the same price. So you definitely try. I mean, I know it has a special place in my heart, and I'll probably always keep it around. Definitely try it and see if you like it.
So, Anthony, well, let me ask you this. You mentioned you've had the Very Old Barton. Saw some similarities in this to that. That's like $9. Is it worth spending 2.5 times as much to get this one, or would you just say if you're out and you're looking for something, would you rather have the Very Old Barton or the small batch?
Well, it's very interesting because I became a little bit of a Very Old Barton snob, which is a strange thing to say because you can't really be a snob of a bottom shelf bourbon, but I guess in my case I was. Of course, when it carried the 6-year age statement, I would have taken it all day. But the weird thing is they had different proofs. I've kind of stopped keeping up with it. It was like 86 proof and 90 proof and then 100 proof. The one that I had the most affinity for was the 100 proof. The reason why I'm saying is because what I think has been going on, and it makes sense because a lot of other distilleries are going through growing pains as well, is I feel like some of the distillate that maybe used to go into the Very Old Barton is kind of going toward the more premium stuff. So right now, I would probably pick the 1792 over the Very Old Barton, the small batch, but if it was still the old bottle and bond stuff or the age-stated stuff, forget about it. I would take that all day because it does cost $10 a bottle or $12 a bottle. It's pretty cheap. So, but you may try that and find you like it just as well.
I think small batch, y'all can make fun of me or not. Actually, don't make fun of me because people listening probably do the same thing. But I mixed some bourbon with some Coke again last night, and sometimes there's just nothing better than that. And this 1792, oh man, if you mix that with some Coke, I bet it'd be really good because it's got the spiciness to it,
to cut through the Coke.
Yeah, like it would just be, I still like to mix it every now and then, and so I think this would be, and it's not real expensive. If you pour it into a Coke, you're not out $100 by pouring that in there. I think it'd be pretty good in there.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's like on groups and bourbon groups and things like that, it's blasphemy to mix your bourbon with anything, but my wife doesn't drink bourbon, and she will have early times with Pepsi. The early times bottle and bond with Pepsi, that's like she will actually drink that because she thinks it tastes amazing, and I think it's for the reasons you just said.
Yeah, hey, you know what?
Whatever mixes is good.
You do you, right? I don't care how you drink your bourbon. I know somebody that mixes it with Sprite. I saw somebody on TV the other day just mixed it with water. If you want to drink it straight, neat, whatever, however you like it, I guess. So,
but you have to remember, always add lime.
No, well, of course, yeah, and about 1,000 ice cubes.
The only time I ever get upset when people are mixing bourbon with anything is when some guy is on a Facebook group going, "Oh, I haven't felt good for 3 weeks, but I'm just going to try to find out the best hot toddy recipe." And I'm like, "No, stop drinking bourbon."
Yeah, right.
You don't need to be drinking bourbon right now if you aren't feeling good.
It's funny that you mentioned those Facebook groups because the other day somebody said, I saw one on there and somebody's like, well, does anybody ever even open their bottles that they have? And they, there's always a big thing about people who are like, oh, just drink them and all that kind of stuff. Myself and a guy I work with, we're always like, man, people can do whatever they want with their bottles. If they want to buy a bottle and throw it out in the middle of the street for traffic to run over it, that's up to them, I don't care what you do with it. I mean, I hope you drink
Yeah.
it, but you don't have to. And just a piece of advice for those of you that are listening that are just getting into the bourbon world. Don't go chasing after everything online that you see. Don't have bourbon envy over people that you see online wanting to have all these things. Part of what we're trying to do here is show you that there are 1,000 things out there that you can buy each and every day, no matter where you go, that are really, really good. And you don't have to have all of the things that people see online. You don't have to have the Pappy. You don't have to have the Rock Hill Farm. They're all really good, but you don't have to have them. You can try all kinds of other things, and you're going to like all of them.
Yeah, full confession there. Like, I've seen some of those posts recently where people are saying, if you really want to come into the category, you should get comfortable with liking Jim Beam, white label, or whatever. And I don't think you got to be to that degree.
No.
I agree with Michael in just saying that, like, I see people rush in. I see it on both ends. Number one, they rush in, they buy a bunch of stuff from a store, and then they think they're going to flip it for money. Like, I don't know how many things I've seen this past week with people posting regular stuff you can find on the shelf, and they're trying to sell it for, $30 over what a store's charging for it. People are like, hey, this is on a shelf. So you see people going that way, and you also see people saying, like, hey, I just paid, X amount of money for Van Winkle, and it's exorbitant. And you're kind of like, well, what can we say about that? I mean, some people just can't get over the fact that they're excited about buying something and they're going to buy it. But if you're patient and you learn, pay attention and just kind of watch those groups. And I would say listen if there is such a thing in the social media world. And that usually makes your experience a little bit better.
Right. Do your research. Like, seriously, if there's a bottle that's $150 at a store, don't just go rush out and buy it just because it's got to be good because it's $150. Like, number one, it's probably that expensive because either it costs a lot for them to make or they source their stuff. And if you've never heard of the company and it's $150 or $200, why don't you go back home and do your research and figure it out, because there's a good chance it'll still be there when you come back. Don't just buy it thinking you're buying something good because you paid so much for it.
I can attest to bourbon envy but I do not have a Weller 12 in my collection. And everyone around me, I swear, has 6, 7, 8, 12 bottles of it, and I can not get my hands on one of them.
Oh,
so
I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the Special Reserve, I've got the Antique, I've got the William Louis Weller, but I can't get my hands on a W12 for some reason. And not that it's okay. I mean, when it happens,
and you're okay with that,
yeah,
right?
When it happens, I'll be fine with it. It's just kind of become a joke in a way that I don't have one yet.
It's part of the Stephen, is you should take pride in the fact that you might be one of the only people in the nation that can't get a Weller 12, but you have a William LaRue Weller, which, I mean, come on, that's a bottle people will never get their hands on.
And those of you listening, understand that we get all of our bottles honestly, right?
Yeah.
So we're not
lotteries,
we're not giving anything by any company. We've not done anything to get any kind of advantage over anybody else. We sat out in the freezing cold lottery for 3 hours before the numbers were even drawn, and my man Steven over here was one of the first ones drawn and got his William LaRue Weller. So, and that may not ever happen again, and I can attest to that as I am for the world in lotteries. So,
yes, absolutely. You got to put in work sometimes. I remember lining up at 5:45 in the morning one time with there was about 10 people in line, and we sat there until the store opened. I think it was a 10 o'clock open. We were there a long time, but the payoff was getting a Weller 12 at retail, and I was like, yep, I'm excited about that. And I'm sure if I post that on Facebook, that people would be like, oh, you waited 4 hours for a Weller 12? Like, what's the matter with you? But, oh, well, that's the way the online world is, but we put our work into for sure.
And with that, thanks for listening to this week's edition. Please like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TheMashupKY. Also, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, keep it neat.